Welcome, everyone. So glad you decided to join us for an hour of rich conversation about early college and accelerating college options into high school. My name is Amy Mcgrath. I'm a vice president at Arizona State University and also the managing director of ASU Preparatory Academies. And what that is a system of schools and innovations, all things ASU, that we get to bring to bear to model build with schools as well, using ASU's assets. So we have an esteemed panel here with us, all coming from very diverse backgrounds that are doing this hard work of responding to the growing demand of early college. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is P20, what truly is the concept of college and career readiness, and how do we build models for the future workforce. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to our panelists to do a short introduction, and Michael, we'll start with you.
Thank you, everyone, for having me today. Really excited to be here with the leaders in AI education, and just being in this room has been so great getting to learn from such incredible leaders. My name is Michael Vilardo, co-founder and CEO of Subject.com. We're building the Netflix of education, 120 accredited high school courses that we help partner with school districts across the United States to help for credit recovery, original credit, and a new product we launched this year, multilingual learning. And so we're really excited to be here with these incredible panelists and have a really rich discussion today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jade Grieve. I'm the Chief of Student Pathways at New York City Public Schools. And in this role, I get to oversee all of our college and career readiness work. And this is something that we've made at New York City Public Schools, the largest district in the country. We've made the concept of career-connected learning and really ensuring that every young person leaves us on a pathway to a rewarding career, a central pillar and mission for our agency. So this is a really important topic to us, and it's really cool to see how much interest there is in the room for this conversation too.
Good morning, Quintin, Boyce, Associate Vice President at ASU. I've been in this space for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I do a lot of work leading our K-12 partnerships. So I work with our K-12 communities. But prior to that, 20 plus years in the K-12 space as a teacher, principal, and most recently a school superintendent in a district in Phoenix.
Good afternoon, Amanda Kocon. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at Edmentum. We support about half the districts in this country in developing their programming around how do you think about really accelerating learning for kids across K-12. So in elementary school, what does it look like to catch kids up, to keep kids on track, and particularly in the secondary space, what does it look like to create options for kids?
Excellent, and I'd love to just help us direct our answers towards who's in the room. Give us a sense, if you are a K-12 educational leader, can you raise your hand? If you are on the higher ed side of the house, can you raise your hand? If you are an ed tech vendor, raise your hand. And if you are in venture capital. Okay. And a philanthropy, raise your hand. Okay. A little bit of everything. Awesome. So I'd love to start, and the way we're going to do this is we're just going to toss a question out. The panelists and I have discussed. We'll just kind of whoever is feeling it or has something to respond to, and we'll go back and forth. If we have a little bit of time at the end, we will open it up to the floor to take some questions. So first we'll start with the topic of P20. It's a term that's used, but is it done well? I'd love to know from the panelists if, is there demand? Do parents and students really even know what that concept is? Do high school administrators, are we building that? And maybe speak a little bit to the current high school programming that you know of or you supervise. Is it outdated?
I'll go. Like double Dutch. Yes, dated. Like I'll start at the end and work backwards. So P20 pipeline, extremely dated. Think about it. Like still governed if you think about the high school space based on Carnegie units. 1906. Carnegie will tell you it's outdated, yet we still do it. So we think about P20, it is conceptually, theoretically, we say it shouldn't be a linear experience, yet it is by design and how we execute. So there's so much opportunity to evolve and innovate, and young people are desperately yearning for it to be so. I can't really think of anything else as far as a social experience that has not innovated like education. If you think about it, like 100 years ago, pretty much the same. Like, I engage in the world much differently than my parents did, and their parents did, when it comes to watching TV, really doing anything. Yet my schooling experience as an aggregate, for the most part, remains relatively unchanged, which is crazy. Go to a doctor, need a procedure, and tell a doctor, hey, it's 2024. However, I would like you to perform this procedure as if it were 1950. That sounds crazy. And give me 2024 outcomes. Yet that's what education is, and that's problematic.
Can I jump in on that? Although I don't have an awesome analogy like that, but I'm gonna steal that. I mean, I think what's interesting is like this term P20, I think, is used a lot in like probably many of the places that we all work and we're like who we're talking to. I don't know that it does really resonate in the same way for students and families, and I would argue too, in some cases, educators, in terms of how we think about those like really strong connections like all the way through. And I think mostly that's true as you think about the connection to workforce, which is really what this is trying to imply, that there's like this kind of this funnel. And I think what we really should push on in that concept, and you picked up on this in terms of this like linear idea, actually for most young people, the path isn't linear. We just haven't really acknowledged that or like built enough systems to work around that. Probably is linear for people that can afford it, frankly, but for everybody else, that's really not true. And so I think the challenge here is like, how do we do more of the integration and the blending in a way that actually excites and engages, so it's not the like 1950s experience expecting 2024 outcomes. And there's some like amazing models that we have of that in the city, and I'm sure it's true in many other places across the country. We have some leaders of those incredible models and schools here at the table in front of me. But the challenge is that they are ones that you can point to, and it's not the experience for every single student at every single school. And so I think that's where we kind of really have to push the paradigm on like, we actually, it doesn't need to be as revolutionary as like you can't even imagine what it would look like. Actually, we kind of know some of the ingredients, we just don't always intentionally put them together in a way that's going to help a student follow a pathway to kind of P20 and like workforce success.
I was going to say, I think from our perspective, the demand is there. I think that a lot has happened in terms of the models and how we think about the Carnegie unit for sure is very static. And yet at the same time, parents, families, kids know something else is possible when they think about how they want to think about what are options available to them. I'm actually fairly inspired by places like New York City, states that are really thinking about what a portrait of a graduate looks like. How are we thinking about connecting workforce back to K-12? Beginning, frankly, as early as elementary school and middle school, which is not about career or college. To Jade's point, I think it is not linear. I mean, what kid goes to college and then retires, right? Like, it is a process of thinking about what are my post-secondary educational opportunities and how do I make sure that I'm ready and the switching costs aren't so high. I have a very solid foundation in academics and non-academics. I've been given an opportunity to explore things of interest and passion, and that windy road becomes much more accessible to more kids through careful programming. The last thing I'll say on terms of demand is when we look at the families we serve, so we serve both school districts and families, about 2/3 of those are folks that are actually accelerating through. So they are trying to curate an experience where in their brick and mortar building, they don't have access to something, or they have access, but they want to take another option. And so they're taking things with us over the summer, over the school year. They're taking AP courses, elective courses, even core courses where they know that they want to think about how they either move faster or move differently through their experience.
Michael, maybe before we move on, since there's general consensus that P20 is not linear, using your assets, what are some of the ways that you're seeing it and maybe empowering models to create a nonlinear P20 system?
Yeah, I was just talking about this with my colleagues yesterday, and you think about, especially once you get into the career space, there's so many opportunities where you may take a giant step forward in your career, in terms of compensation and such, or a step back in order to take a step forward. But school, we're ingrained in this structure of you're going year by year. It's very traditionalist that you're based with people of your age. You know, all of us in this room are different ages, different backgrounds, different demographics, but in school, you're placed with folks of your age within a 12-month period. Why is that? How can we better accelerate and allow students to move on their own pace? And so everything we do at Subject is asynchronous. Students can engage and go as fast or as slow as they like. Our school system has made it about the school and the class takes the pace of the slowest learner, which is totally understandable because we have to be able to prop up the most vulnerable populations, but that does not service the individual pathways that we want to be able to empower as a community, as a nation here. We want to be able to empower all students to achieve their truest form of fulfillment in life. And so that's why when we talk about college and career readiness, you know, in 2035, over half the jobs that will exist in 2035 don't exist today. Yet this static curriculum that we've been developed with over the last decade or centuries of sorts has them preparing for jobs of the 1980s, 90s, 2000s. We need to be able to bring new topics and new courses as quickly as possible to market. And so with all the standards alignments and curriculum requirements there are today, that makes it very difficult. And so if we can have a better job of working across entities, government, private sector, and allow for more personalized learning, and we believe in the asynchronous video-first environment, it allows for students to fall in love with more topics that are meant for them to be able to accelerate their growth.
All right, so I think we also all agree the system is a bit broken, but these are leaders who are working to break the mold. I'd be curious if you all could speak a little to the how. How do you disrupt the current system? Starting a new school may be easier, but working within schools that, you know, large districts that systems change is really tough. So if you can speak a little bit to the how of disrupting the current system.
I'm happy to take that. So maybe to say a little bit about what we're doing in New York to address that challenge. And one, I would just say, what we haven't done is entirely reinvented the wheel. We've actually taken the best of what exists already in the system in career and technical education, in early college, but recognize that for too long that's existed not only in its own individual domains, like early college is here and CTE tends to be over here, but that it hasn't been available for the majority of students. So what we've done is taken that, we've launched a new program called Future Ready NYC, and what it seeks to do is really redesign through a framework and integrate a couple of the critical ingredients that we know have meaning for young people, and are also the kinds of things that will accelerate their path post-secondary. So if you're in a Future Ready program, you're getting access in the 9th grade to early career exposure opportunities. That sequences through into like the 11th and 12th grade, and you're doing internships or apprenticeships to really build that, build career readiness skills in a workplace. We're coupling that with early college credit and credentials. And all of that is themed to industries where we know there's a lot of opportunity for young people, but too often they're locked out of those because the concept has been go to school and then figure that out and like find your way in. We need to open the doors for them much earlier. So we're doing that in partnership with business. We're doing that in partnership with post-secondary partners. And one thing that the way in which we've designed this is, one, it's a kind of it's by application, so schools apply if they want to be in it. That creates a really important, I think, coalition of the willing, and I think there's lots of demand to offer these opportunities, especially post-pandemic, where students are at a much greater clip, in a really good way, demanding, like, tell me how this is going to prepare me for my future and why I need to know this. And so I think this is providing an opportunity to kind of respond to that while also giving students the ingredients to be more successful post-secondary, to have a faster path to a workforce transition if that's what they need, and to actually just see the range of different opportunities that exist. And while we're doing that, the way in which we're doing that with the framework, with additional resources to schools, with intentional supports for the partners that are coming in, we're also laying out some benchmarks on like what's a quality experience. And when we talk about early college and dual enrollment, what do we want to make sure is true for a young person in the 10th or 11th or 12th grade to make sure that first experience is the one that totally like captures their mind on like what's possible for them, sense of belonging, and really unveiling for them kind of where they could go. And that's not always true in these experiences. And so I think the intentionality around quality and design and the resources to kind of go along with that has been a big part of how we have, to date, in just the 2 years that's been running, brought in 100 schools with a plan to grow next year, engage with our 2 largest public higher education institutions in the state, CUNY and SUNY, and then brought in big businesses like JP Morgan Chase, Google, Northwell Health, who I think generally want to do more, but it's also not just because of our size and scale, it's hard to figure out where to plug in sometimes. And so I think that framework is really important.
So one thing that I really like to think about is there was a real special milestone or date of celebration this month. Netflix turned 26 years old. So Netflix turned
Everyone feels old now.
Yeah, and I apologize. Let's all take a moment to feel old together. So Netflix turned 26 years old. That means all the students we're helping in elementary, high school, college, they've grown up with Netflix, Instagram, YouTube, now they have TikTok. We need video-first curriculum. And so subjects really leaned into having video-first curriculum. Whether we like it or not, and I know that I'm prisoner to it as well, you go to YouTube or TikTok if you're looking up something and trying to understand how to better do it yourself. And so how can we have aligned standards-based curriculum with a video-centric modality? All these students today, as they grow up, they turn to video first, and so it's really important for us to lean in to what their preferences are. You know, as you pointed out earlier about the little change over the last 100 years, we shouldn't be forcing students to churn butter in the backyard. They have to be able to be taught in a modality that really resonates with them. And of course, there's nothing that parallels the importance of an incredible instructor in person, face to face, being able to build up a student's confidence. That magical moment will forever always be the moment of truth that we always want to be able to strive to empower and partner with. But the moments around that will allow for this teacher to have more one-on-one time with the students or more small group instruction is having video-based curriculum that can be able to help scale the best teachers.
I agree. And I want to acknowledge, like, change is hard. Like, change is like super difficult. And so we keep iterating because it's what we know. My youngest is 3. I have more in common with a pilgrim than I do her. You know, my current iPhone is like the worst piece of technology she'll ever know. Yet I'm in charge of reimagining the system that she will be a part of. And so I want to acknowledge first off, like, it's super hard, but very possible, so that there are different vehicles for delivering instruction that we should reimagine and reconsider. But then I also think the actual structure and frame of education has to be reimagined as well. Amazing colleagues at ASU Prep Digital, doing incredible things, partnering with the university to bring college access in a comprehensive way to every kid. Typically, when it comes to exposure, we gatekeep. You know, certain students get access to certain opportunities. It's an issue. And we wonder what happens at the end when there's a gap in achievement and opportunities and so forth. So I think we have to really just kind of blow the model up. Everything about the pandemic is and has been horrible. And it's like an opportunity, you know? Like, I happened to be a superintendent throughout the pandemic, and it was an innovation accelerator. It was a leadership accelerator. Like, we made 7 years worth of progress in 7 months. And not because that was amazing, but because I had the opportunity to say, well, COVID says we now have to do this. So we demonstrated that something different was possible, and I'm afraid that we're missing a window in time when a very antiquated system known as education, a very slow, mature system, was forced to stop and then reimagine and do something different. And there are communities that took advantage of that opportunity. But how do we scale that and make that the norm for many instead of a few is what we have to reconsider. And no matter where you sit in the ecosystem of the P20 world, like, there's a lever to be pulled, and it can be daunting when you think about change. So you don't have to boil the ocean, you know what I mean? Like, build a winning model within your locus of control, and then other people love winning models. You know, like, I reside in Tempe, Arizona. I have the luxury of working with a lot of our K-12 leaders. Geographically, Tempe is not huge. You can wrap your arms around it. I work with our 3 superintendents. I work with the university. I work with the municipality. And I'm like, let's do something cool. The right people happen to be in the right seats for that to be possible. And we're kicking around ideas because we know we won't hurt students. Like, if we just keep doing what we're doing, like, we're gonna get what we get. So if we do something different, we're not gonna hurt them. So, like, why not try something different? And then we are building something very cool. And the minute we do, and we finish, and we have outcomes, City of Phoenix is gonna be super interested. City of Mesa's gonna be super interested. I'll be back here at GSV talking about it in front of you guys again, you know what I mean? And then you're gonna be interested. So don't be overwhelmed. And I acknowledge, like, it's super hard.
I think the only thing I would lean into a little bit is to say the outcomes matter. And so we have been in the space innovating, and that intentional design with a thought towards what are the outcomes you're going for, I think couldn't be more important. One of the pleasures of my job is I get to travel around the country and actually see what is working and work with our customers and our clients and partners around like just designing something new. And one of the things we always start with is what are the outcomes? Like who are your kids? Who is your community? What is your workforce? There are lots of national trends, but at the end of the day, it becomes very hyper-local when you are talking about designing for a community and for specifically for a workforce in a place. And so back to, I think you each spoke to it a little bit, but what the outcomes are matter. It matters that kids exit K-12, and this is, Amanda speaking from the heart, knowing how to read and do math and are ready for the next thing, because that is what reduces the switching costs. And so when we think about the outcomes that matter, getting kids opportunities and access, and that they are exiting really ready, and to Jade's point too, with a real plan. And the plan isn't something that they started in 12th grade and got backed into because they didn't have opportunities. They had opportunities, fulsome opportunities, to do grade level work, that they had an opportunity to check out what are their options as early as middle school, that they had an option to really develop the workforce skills that we know matter, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, all of the things, and numeracy and literacy, right? And so how we think about what we're designing for and really keeping a focus on outcomes with a big O, right? Outcomes with a big O, I think matters a ton. And if we talk about just designing without a focus on that, I think we will have lost the point.
I'm really glad you brought outcomes up, Amanda. I think unfortunately right now, outcomes are correlated to income brackets. So I'm curious how you all are thinking about equity in deploying these solutions. How can you ensure intentionally design models that marginalized and disadvantaged youth can have access to early college?
So, I think for us, it's one of the major drivers of the work we do, which is making sure that kids, we serve a lot of kids in cities, in big districts, in small districts. We serve a huge number of rural kids, and making sure that all kids have fulsome access to opportunities. We have, this is not an advertisement, but I'm just trying to give you like sense of scale, over 500 courses, AP courses for all. It is part of our founding, is making sure that AP and honors courses, electives courses, CTE, we think that high quality materials are both about core instruction and frankly about career connected learning. How do you get the highest quality materials and opportunities and chances for kids to catch up, practice, right, with a teacher, by themselves, and also those accesses to, I think one of the things that we are really focused on is the research, and we've talked about this a lot with ASU. We just released a study that said that kids that did our Algebra 1 course online, synchronistically or asynchronistically, scored an entirely 5% points better than kids in the comparison group that were in a brick and mortar, which I think is important, right? Because how we give them access to quality matters. Now, just to be clear, on that scale, that is almost a full semester of additional learning. And so just giving kids access to, which is one of my passions, grade level material, giving them a chance is a huge part of the how you think about research and outcomes.
I jump in on the equity point in the way in which we're thinking about this to say a couple of things. One, the reason we're talking about trying to expand dual enrollment opportunities is because we know they have an impact in terms of the likelihood of not just post-secondary enrollment, but post-secondary completion, and therefore what comes from that. But If we look at our data today, what you see in terms of who's getting access to dual enrollment opportunities tends to be pretty consistent with who's ultimately ending up in degree programs and maybe completing. And so I do think there is something we have to lean into really seriously about how do we expand access. And there's some ways we're thinking about that. One, I think part of the Future Ready work that I talked about before is really designed in this like whole sequence through high school. For now, we plan to go into middle school. But for now, it's designed in that way, in part because it's too late to tell someone they're not ready for an early college experience in the 11th grade if actually, frankly, we knew about that data in the 9th grade. And so how do we design experiences in between to make sure we're both capitalizing on that as an incentive, but also really ensuring students get that opportunity? Secondly, the reason why some students aren't getting access is about some of the decisions about on the college side and on the school side about who thinks who's ready. And there's some really important work that's come out of an organisation called Equal Opportunity Schools, have really shown that students who kind of maybe aren't getting to that kind of that score to get access, if with some of the work that they've done, they've shown students actually below that are being successful in these dual enrollment programs, but our systems screen them out effectively. And then two other things I would say, part of what we're trying to do through Future Ready and other places is to redesign where learning happens and how it happens. And so I think our models for delivery around dual enrollment also need to be updated. We also can't ask students to make a choice between you can have this really awesome dual enrollment opportunity and it's on Saturday morning where that conflicts with maybe family obligations or a job or after school. And so we're really trying to do more to kind of revamp and create some kind of pressure in the system to make sure more of that lives inside the traditional school day. So you're learning in different places from different people and different content in different subjects. And then the models of delivery too. I think that it is great to make sure that there are experiences to be on campus and have that sense of belonging, but to the things that many of the panelists have already said, there's lots we can do online and we can do more of that, and that can create more access and equity too. So those are some of the ways that we're thinking about leaning into that.
Yeah, this is something we're extremely passionate about, an entirely Latino-led co-founded team. And so we've really focused a lot on bringing a lot of diversity in front of the screen. And so, if you don't see it, you can't dream it. And so 70% of our instructors are women or people of color. We're really excited about being able to provide that opportunity to learn some incredible leadership across the entire spectrum of demographics. And one thing we're also extremely passionate about is ELs, so English learners. There's so many folks in this country now that don't speak English in the home. There's so many students that are not even literate in their own native language. How do we expect them to have success in the classroom having to learn a foreign language when they can't even write in their own native language? And so we've developed courses that are completely dubbed as well as being able to have the accent match, so it's incredibly authentic and native in Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, Korean. We're really excited to be able to roll these out throughout the rest of the course of the year. We really want to be able to help some of these vulnerable populations be able to have more confidence and want to pursue education as far as possible, because we know how different the trajectory is, even going one or two notches farther than you would without support. If you can graduate high school instead of dropping out, if you go to community college instead of just graduating from high school, if you go to state university instead of community college, every layer that you could go farther, your chances of likelihood of success and pursuing your truth increases tremendously. And so we want to play a part in that journey where we can help students go 1 to 2 trajectories higher than they would without our support. And we're really lucky to work with some incredible districts around having some more innovative solutions in the classroom for both core students, but also some of these incredible English learners.
So I'm surprised that the first time we heard the phrase dual enrollment was from you, Jade. It's something that we're here talking about early college, but dual enrollment's been around for decades and decades. And so credentialing, really also technology has completely changed the way that we can build models around early college. Curious if, what are you seeing, and as we break up this linear nature, what are you seeing that technology is doing to kind of expire the word dual enrollment?
I'll start. So I think technology provides opportunity, in a way that traditional dual enrollment hasn't been able to. And again, like dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, like working definitions may vary depending on geographic location, as a good colleague of mine just shared yesterday. And so when we look at like who has early college opportunities historically and what do completions rate look like we could predict that. We could predict that based on zip code. We could predict that based on like school status. And now here comes technology. And now we really have an opportunity to not be a gatekeeper to opportunities for students. Really, like, all of this is an adult issue. The minute we get out the way and stop making decisions on behalf of young people, like, young people will do incredibly amazing things. So dual enrollment is awesome. We know research shows if a kid has an experience and does well a couple times, that they're more likely to persist and graduate from higher ed. But I wonder if the entire model could be reimagined. Again, like our colleagues are doing at ASU, where it's not like this other thing you do, but it is the thing you do. You know what I mean? How do you blur the lines between transition points? Like in Arizona, we got a really unique, K-12 system. Some districts are K-8, some are 9-12, some are K-12. Ridiculous. So if you're a K-8 community, like, how do you blur the lines between that 8th and 9th transition? 8th and 9th transition is super difficult, no matter what your context is. But when you talk about like two different districts with programmatic, initiatives and priorities, like, super hard. And then same thing for 12th and post-secondary. The minute you can blur those lines and create opportunity based on what students are ready for, like, you could really do cool stuff as far as access. And technology allows that to happen for the first time ever. Like, we've always said, as a teacher, go in your classroom with 30 kids and differentiate and meet every kid where they're at and grow them, and it's like impossible to do. Literally impossible. But now with technology, it's not. Which means if you have a kid that's ready for college, like, give them that opportunity. Like, don't make them wait until like they graduate from high school to then take a college experience. Like, make college and high school a experience together. Like, blur the lines. Again, it's super difficult. Like, we are built to think in chronological order. Like, go to Chipotle. Have them put the cheese on your burrito first. It is like a sin. You gotta go this way first. And that's a burrito. It's like if we talk about an academic journey and experience, like, it just does not resonate with us because we didn't do that. Yet we are in charge with creating systems for young people that expect and want something different. Like, dual enrollment, awesome. College and high school and career should just all be one big blur. Like, we should talk about like school through the lens of career and not create this false reality of one or the other. We think about there's so much need and opportunity for ed reform, and until we talk about education through the lens of the economy, through the lens of career, we'll kind of be static. We'll have a lot of really upset and angry educators, but we need everybody to be a part of that. So the language matters, and it's really important.
I was just going to say, I think the technology, we have so much already at our fingertips. I know that's probably a radical thing in a technology conference, but we have places that we're working that haven't even begun to tap what's possible. So we like to talk about learning, like, everywhere learning occurs, right? And so how are we using the technology so that it is available when a kid is on a bus, it is available from home, it is available from anywhere that learning occurs. And I think what's really interesting about the way that technology is, it's not just people's notion of what a digital experience is probably also dated. Like, if you look at what some of our, the best places in the country, they're really blowing this apart. And part of it is by just necessity, right? Like, we have school budgets that are under constraint. We don't have enough bus drivers. We can't get kids to the center. And so what do you do about that? You start to tap into the tools you have. And so I think, like, almost under necessity, there's been some real fascinating innovation around how you think about curating a kid's experience and how teachers and educators use that both within their classroom and not. I mean, for the first time, we're seeing, like, in elementary school classes, right? An elementary school teacher who has 1 to 30 and is really struggling to differentiate, guess what you can do with the technology? You can add virtual humans to that class, right? So instead of having small group instruction where you're struggling to get enough assistance and aides in that room, you suddenly are using the technology to really extend your team. So your teaching team changes, right? And how you think about the kid who, I was just dialing into a class last week. It was a AP Chem class. It's a group of 4 kids in a rural district that wanted to take AP Chem. Historically, that would not have been possible. The school does not have that teacher, and even if they did, they cannot afford to give it to just 4 kids. But the technology allows us to really think about the way that we're extending the human reach as much as the technical reach.
Maybe just one thing to add, which is a slightly different take on it. I mean, I agree with so much has been shared, and we're both thinking about this in context of the early college experiences, making much more of those kind of the dual credit and the thing that's happening kind of online, could be in school, just giving different ways of access. And of course, a virtual learning initiative, which sounds very much like what you just described, Amanda. The other thing I would say is I think there's untapped potential in how we're using technology to help students connect the dots from being in one of those dual enrollment classes. I think it's not just enough to give them access to that particular class and to that credit, but help them understand where you can take that. What credential does that take you to? From that credential, what degree could that take you to what job? That is such a murky and messy space. And while there's different kind of labour markets right across the country, so much is actually very consistent in many of these large industries about what those pathways are. And I think we don't do enough of that in the dual enrolment. We think that like the course is enough, but actually the course to what? And how much it accelerates you. And think about that in sense of time and money. And so I think there's just a lot more opportunity there that we can help students kind of know and feel, and for parents too, because sometimes these opportunities still are like we talk about kind of breaking up and like revolutionizing education, but also from the family perspective, you're seeing some of these as trade-offs. Like, well, if you're doing that, then you're not doing that. And so I think our ability to actually show and make very real what that experience gets you, I think is a way that technology can help that we haven't really unlocked at like full scale yet.
Michael, any comments on that?
I couldn't agree more with everyone on the panel. It's so great to hear the passion and everyone how much they want to lean into technology. You know, we think about where the future of career and college readiness may be. So many of these careers and companies are spent behind a laptop or a phone, and you know, it's great to be able to see so much opportunity out there for young people, but why not lean into building those skills? You know, when the calculator was brought into the classroom, it was very shocking and abrasive, and many people shied away from it, but over time now it's a commonplace that we use every single day. The same should be true for AI, content, media. How are we going to be reshaping the future? What is 2100 or 2200 looks like? Most likely we'll be using those technologies every single day in either your personal, professional, or both lives. And so the more that we can lean into the future, usually when we look back at history, those of us that leaned into progression typically are looked upon in a shiner light. So why can't we just lean into that more and more and say, hey, things that come into the classroom like the calculator, the desktop, the laptop, now AI, we can find great ways to leverage these and help prepare our students to have an incredible life and be a contributing member of society as an adult.
So we have about a little less than 3 minutes left. I'd just be curious if the panel, you can talk a little bit about workforce development and maybe some of the most prolific programming you're seeing that's impacting or you hope to impact the pipeline for the future workforce.
So we have done something very controversial, which is to look around the country and realize that for digital providers like ourselves, digital first curriculum providers, there actually isn't a lot of really high quality, scalable career learning content. Now, most folks want us to focus on the 16 other things we could focus on, and we said, no, we're gonna build an entirely new catalog of offerings. So at the beginning of this month, we launched an entirely new catalog of 160 semesters of CTE. We have partnered with America Succeeds to embed durable skills beginning in middle school so that kids can really experience career exploration. And so we're building from the ground up a middle school offering. And the reason that's important is because that is only part of the story, right? Like the content isn't enough. And so how we all partner with states and districts and chambers of commerce and others to actually connect that now to something so that kids not just have the course, but have a sense of what's possible and how planning their pathway and thinking about what's next post-secondary is the thing. So we very humbly submit it's a very small piece of the picture. And like, how do we make sure that that ecosystem continues to build in the places we all work?
I'll go super quick. I'm watching the shot clock. Just getting people in the room, creating an ecosystem, you know. And so pulling in elementary, high school, higher ed folks, municipality, and industry folks in a room together. again, to blur the lines and to talk about education through the context of career and opportunity. And the good thing is, like, career folks, like, whether altruistic or not, like, there's a desire to, like, figure out pipeline, because folks need people to work in spaces in the future. So, like, actively recruiting now from the university while building a pipeline of the future. And that's been really cool. So again, like, building a winning model, starting small, doesn't have to be huge. But we have industry folks, like, creating opportunities for young people all the time, working with high school communities to reimagine curriculum, to do it through the lens of the workforce. So there is context. You're not learning something because somebody said you had to, but because it actually makes sense, which is what young people today want. Unlike when we were old, when we learned it because we were told you have to. So not even anything like groundbreaking. It's just getting people in a room to talk, and then just try one thing and then iterate.
In 7 seconds? Oh, the time's going up. Now it's going the other direction. You're all trapped for the rest of the afternoon. I would say, I mean, like, the core of what we're trying to do is really very much of what's been described. Like, the Future Ready is about blurring the lines between college, career, and school. It's not saying to students, you have to wait to figure that out. You have to wait to get that experience. We know that's just, we're losing too many young people along the pipeline. We're also making some, like, really important moves, I think, to say, like, there are some things that, frankly, we've been talking about for decades, that we say everyone needs to have: power skills, career readiness skills. And people aren't universally getting that in their educational experience. So we're putting a stake in the ground on that and saying that it's not just for students that are in pathways, but we want every student, for example, in the 9th grade to get career readiness skills. That is an equity play, but it's also just something that everybody needs. And so we need to make sure that it gets to the systems where all the students are. And then just continuing to grow the kinds of experiences that are intentionally aligned and connecting the dots between those different systems. I think we've still got a long way to go in making sure that the student doesn't have to figure out how to fit all of that together once they get to a higher education institution. But I think dual enrollment, it can be one of those, like, key levers to really make that connection earlier and to make sure that the systems of enrollment and transfer are really seamless for students. And lastly, I think, you know, businesses do want to do more, but we have to make it easier for them to plug in. And I think that's why, you know, our approach to taking a framework of the things that evidence tells us we know make a difference in a young person's life, do that thing and do them in a way that is integrated and is not kind of at the expense of something else in the school day.
Yeah, and thank you all for having me on the panel today. I know we're a little over time. The biggest thing that I'd emphasize from subject standpoint that's really concise is leaning into new technologies and classes that are relevant for the modern day learner. We have a full financial suite, financial literacy 1 and 2, cryptocurrency, NFT, I believe the first or one of the first accredited courses in the country for those topics, music production, how many of your students want to be DJs when they grow up. Exploring passions and interests can allow for you to be able to develop real skill sets that can be applied to traditional frameworks and traditional careers, but being creative and curious is so powerful, and we need to have topics that interest our modern day learners, and so we really want to lean into that together.
Awesome. Round of applause for the panelists.